Hello
Hello
there.
there. Welcome to Season 7 of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Hydroid Medusa. Okay, no, never mind.
You took me by surprise. And I'm Prince Lee-Char.
I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
Welcome back to Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Season 7, at least the first couple episodes are going to be a little weird because Jacob is unfortunately not going to be available most of this summer. So we are recording most of the beginning of Season 7 way ahead of time. So we're mostly recording these in early April when we have the time. So, but yeah, let's just get into this episode. Why don't we, Jacob?
Yeah, let's do it.
So this episode we watched the Mon Calamari arc at the beginning of Season 4 of the Clone Wars. Water War, Gungan Attack, and Prisoners are the 3 episodes. These 3 episodes are 3 of my favorite episodes of the show, just period. I'm very excited to discuss what I think about them.
In Water War, there is unrest on Mon Calamari. The 2 main species of the planet, the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, are feuding because Prince Lee-Char's father, the old king, was assassinated. And now that Prince Lee-Char has to become the king, the Quarren are not happy. But the Separatists have sent an agitator, the giant shark man Riff Tamsin, to stir up dissent.
Yes, Shark Man.
Karkadon. Yeah, Shark Man. Karkadon. Great, Karkadon. And yeah, so they just sent him there. And it's a mess. And also Anakin, Padme, and Jar Jar, I believe.
No, Jar Jar's not until next episode.
Okay. And Anakin and Padme are there also to try and help negotiations, which doesn't really work. And eventually the Quarren, secretly backed by the Separatists, or not so secretly, I guess, they attack the Mon Calamari on the surface, and the episode ends in all-out warfare.
Yep. So we'll get into more of the specifics. Let's go to the fortune cookie, which is when destiny calls, the chosen have no choice. You know, a lot of this arc, the big theme of this arc for me is leadership and coming into your own as a leader and as a person, but really as a leader.
Yeah, that's a huge theme here for Lee-Char.
Thrusted into the role of king. Not king yet. He becomes king at the end of the arc, but he's thrusted into the role of leader, not having had that his entire life because his father was, of course, the king. But he, you know, we see more often than not in this episode, he's forced into it more than he accepts it. He, you know, the chosen have no choice. They, you know, when duty calls, it doesn't matter if you want to or not. If you're not ready, that's on you.
Obviously, it's a little bit hard for him, but, you know, to the outside world, the harsh reality kind of is, you know, you have to be ready. And
yeah,
if there are unfortunate circumstances, there are unfortunate circumstances, but that's the way it is, you know? Yeah. It is very unfair.
So can I like fan out a little bit on this arc for a second, because I feel like if I don't do this now, I'm gonna do it later. I love the idea that this entire arc takes place underwater. The dynamic that brings to the episode is to the arc is so interesting and so fascinating, because we get all this new technology and like new ways of fighting, which is really like just fascinating from an in-universe perspective. One thing I felt was a little missing from this arc that I would have loved to see, and I think about this every time I watch this arc, even though I love it. Throw some, like, random wildlife in the waters. Like, we're supposed to believe that the Mon Calamari and the Quarren are the only 2 species living in the water.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not the only 2, but I think they're the only 2 sentient species.
I just want some random fish. I just want some. Can we see some random fish? Can some random creature come out of the walls of coral and attack them for 2 seconds, like like that happens on Umbara every like 5 minutes? You know.
Yeah. Honestly, that would be nice.
Yeah, it would be really cool. One of the other biggest problems with this arc is that it's only 3 episodes long. It's like it goes by way too fast.
Yeah.
n-
You know, I'm honestly kind of surprised that you love this episode so much because I think it's kind of again one of the more fighty military episodes, and a lot of it feels like a lot of it is just fighting.
it is, but it has, that embracing of the destiny, that whole like leadership thing. It all feels very Star Wars to me. It always feels
Yeah.
it all feels very home to me. This has a lot of this arc for some reason for me has a lot of original trilogy vibes. I think probably because the two main species, were both introduced in Return of the Jedi. The Mon Calamari were introduced with Ackbar and their cruisers, and the Quarren were introduced by one of Jabba's henchmen was a Quarren, and that was the first time we saw them in Star Wars. So it has very Return of the Jedi vibes to me. Yeah. So we see that disagreement with the Quarren and the Mon Calamari. I want to point something out. Way back, I mean, it's not way back for us because we recorded this a couple weeks ago, but way back by the time we released this, we released a tier list episode. I don't know if you remember that, Jacob.
Yes.
And we did a villains tier list, and I previously had expressed my disappointment with Riff Tamsin. I always misremembering that guy. That guy gets under my skin so easily. He is, in my opinion, a really great villain. He's a little cartoony at points, I will admit that, but he gets under my skin. He knows exactly what to say to get people as angry as possible at any single moment. I'm gonna give that guy a lot of credit for what he does for this arc. And plus, they're fighting a freaking shark the entire time. That's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. I also love that speaking of how Tamsin gets under people's skin so easily, the first thing he does in the entire arc is tell the leader of Mon Cala to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
Like, this guy means business. This guy knows what he's doing, and he doesn't have respect.
He has no respect. He's so,
I mean,
my gosh.
He says in the third episode, I respect you, hunter to prey, but that's just something he says to make it
that's just something he says,
evil. Yeah. Yeah. What did I say? Oh, yeah. This is the funny thing. Padme asks, what could the Republic can do to help the peace? What I've learned from Padme is that bringing the Republic into any argument is a really terrible idea.
Yeah, I think.
Because everyone hates
Padme never
Republic.
learns that. Yeah. Everyone hates the Republic. It's so true.
It's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Anything I was gonna say one more thing about this whole agitation scene in the chambers before you say anything.
No, I think it's a little puzzling to me that Riff Tamsin is kind of accepted by the Quarren as a good spokesperson or as someone to trust, given that a lot of the Quarren's shtick seems to be a lot of it seems to be no outsiders. Like, we don't trust the outsiders. We don't trust
actually
even the Mon Calamari anymore. We want to be a more insular society.
It's funny.
And then they love it when Riff Tamsin comes in. So it's a little confusing, but
it's funny because the note I was about to mention was, this is a matter between the Quarren and the Mon Cala, and then I said in my notes, that's news to me, Nossor Ri, because you're getting orders from Tamsin over here.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Nossor Ri, by the way, is a character. I think I have a problem with him like you have a little bit of a problem with Bo-Katan. Nossor Ri is easily accepted as like a reluctant villain.
Yeah.
In this arc, why? Why is Nossor Ri the reluctant villain? He said the first thing he says is, and by the way, this whole thing boggles me. Help me understand this. He says out loud to everyone, he goes, "Hey, I'm not gonna allow another Mon Calamari king. This sucks. I'm getting out of here. See ya, bye." And then he comes back and says, "Hey, Lee-Char, so your father and I were like really close."
Yeah.
What the heck does he think he's doing? I mean, you can do one, or you can do the other.
I mean, I guess he's trying to. I mean, I don't know. You could say that that kind of shows the balance between politics and people, and maybe it shows a little bit, you know, how
If
politics can kind of get in the way of personal relationships and get in the way of bonds and
if they were
family
just
and friends.
yeah, if
But
they were
I
just
still think it's
leaving,
weird.
if they were just leaving, I'd understand that. But they're not leaving. They're leaving to start killing the Mon Calamari. I mean, Lee-Char
Yeah.
doesn't directly know that, but that's one of the options that he thinks might happen. Nossor Ri, on the other hand, totally does know that. I also love, later in the episode, I do not believe the Quarren will attack.
And then immediately they
Attack!
immediately attack it. That is such a great
That is like, I
that
think
is
that's
such a
like,
great moment.
yeah. I remember when we had Alden Diaz on a long time ago. He was talking about the whole "good thing those bugs can't aim," and he
Yeah,
said it
this
was like a
is
George
the
Lucas
version of
line.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, this by that same token feels like a Lucas line. It's like, yeah, let's just throw some irony in there. From some, yeah, yeah. So we then see Senator Tills, who, by the way, Senator Tills appears for like 5 seconds in Revenge of the Sith, and now suddenly
Really?
she's like a main character in this arc, which I
Oh
love.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we also see, by the way, Captain, now the then Captain Ackbar, who will soon be Admiral Ackbar. By the way, did you notice that when the Quarren and Tamsin attack the city, Ackbar says it's an attack.
I did notice that. I thought that was a
I'm,
great
I'm like
detail.
I'm like
Great
admit it.
reference,
You just
obviously.
that was I was like, oh, I'm surprised they never said that. They never gave him the opportunity to say that line, and then I saw it. I'm like, they did. They
Yep,
totally did.
they did.
When the Mon Calamari soldier gets shot in front of Lee-Char,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
that moment is such a small moment, but it says so much about Lee-Char in that moment and how not ready he is for this. He says to press the attack, and then Anakin punches back with a really interesting line. Forget your tradition. This is war.
Yeah.
It goes back to me to season 1, all the way to season 1, with the whole T-Watt Ka thing, with the whole non-violence
Yeah,
idea.
it definitely reminds
So
me of that.
it's like the balance of traditions and survivability in that regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we have and then of course Kit Fisto and Ahsoka and a bunch of clones managed to get on to Mon Calamari.
I like just the visual setup of it. I thought it was pretty cool and striking to kind of get to go up to the surface for a bit.
First of all, I want to say it's ridiculous that this is like Kit Fisto's second appearance in the Clone Wars up to this point.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, what the heck? I don't understand. Second of all, remember when we were doing a Star Wars Clone Wars, the Tartakovsky one, and we saw
Yes.
Kit Fisto leading attack on Quarren on Mon Calamari, and now we see
Yes.
Kit Fisto leading an attack on Quarren on Mon Calamari. Awesome detail right there. We get to one of my favorite lines in this entire arc. I don't know if you caught this one. Hear that? They're cheering for you. They're cheering for them. Then make it for you. Come on,
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah, I feel like it really did a good job of displaying the message of stepping up and leading, and because the fortune cookie for this was when destiny calls, the chosen have no choice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it did a great job of conveying that. I really liked what they did there.
Yeah. My thing was like, it's the whole this arc is a Lee-Char hero's journey, that's what it is. We have that Joseph Campbell template for that. I often compare this arc to The Lion King because it involves the murder of a father and the son trying to take his place, which is The Lion King. Simba at the end of that movie or play or whatever, however you see it, even though his father lives in him like some eternal CNN. That's a weird in reference, but okay. He needs to defeat Scar as Simba, not as Mufasa's son. You know, Rey needs to take her destiny not as Rey, the granddaughter of Palpatine, but as Rey, and eventually as Rey Skywalker, the destiny she chose for herself. Luke needs to take his destiny as not Luke, the son of Vader, but Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. It's that idea of taking your destiny, not taking the destiny of somebody else, not taking the legacy of somebody else. That it comes up over and over again in this arc. Speaking of Lee-Char, by the way, I feel bad for Ahsoka this entire arc. I went through and counted the number of times that Ahsoka is assigned to Lee-Char duty.
Yeah.
It's like
a lot.
5-6 times.
Wow. Yeah.
Ahsoka, go with the prince. Ahsoka, go with Lee-Char. Ahsoka, go with the prince. I'm like,
that kind of reminds me of her and Lux Bonteri a little bit. I don't know.
A little bit.
Maybe not the romance aspect, but the aspect of this.
Here's
your charge. Go get them.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
They have a strong bond by the end of this, yeah.
I think they do have a lot in common. Maybe not a lot in common, but I think they definitely have a bit in common of, kind of being very much on the young, very inexperienced, but kind of being forced to fill a big pair of shoes,
Yeah.
Lee-Char as Prince, and Ahsoka as Anakin's Padawan. And they're both trying to figure out how to do that with grace.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool comparison.
I definitely think so. I think Ahsoka, like 3 years younger, not 3 years, 2 years younger Ahsoka and Lee-Char would have been very, very interesting, because Ahsoka is now, she's grown so much since season 1, where now she's way more confident in her role as Anakin's apprentice. Back in season 1, there's that line in the Clone Wars movie. I'm worried I'm too young to be your Padawan. That Ahsoka and Lee-Char would have been fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then they do this whole thing. There's that sequence in the tubes, like those water tubes, where Tamsin just chases them. By the way, am I the only one who's wondering if Tamsin will get brain damage by smashing into those tubes over and over again?
No. Would it be made of me to say I hope so? Tamsin, he's a...
I mean, would it be made of me to say it almost looks like he already has brain damage?
Oh, wow. Goodness. I mean, he is quite the murderer.
Yeah.
I would say so.
He is an animal. That's the only way to say it. He is a legitimate animal.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is how he it's interesting how kind of as an alien he kind of explores this side that we don't see too much in Star Wars of, maybe trying to straddle the line between sentient and wild beast, where, he's clearly sentient, he's talking, he's reasoning, but then at the same time he is he's also kind of using his jaws to attack, and he's very much trying to play up his sharkness, basically the fact that he is an evolved apex predator, to try and scare people. So I think that's interesting.
Did you notice, am I the only one who noticed this, but did you see the weird thing he's done with his jaw? He does with his jaw. He dislocates his jaw when he wants to attack really hard.
Yeah. I wonder what that's all about.
What the hell is that about?
I don't know. I think it just kind of shows that he is a very strange, weird fellow. That is,
he's really weird. But I don't know. It plays into his mystique a little bit, I'd say.
Yes, I agree.
And then we have one of my favorite pieces of technology in any Clone Wars episode ever. We get the Hydroid Medusas, or as I will call them, literally the entire rest of the episode, as I wrote in my notes, Dem Hydroid Medusas. Okay, let me tell you about something. These Hydroid Medusas are simultaneously, in my opinion, one of the coolest pieces of technology ever to appear in anything Star Wars, and one of the dumbest pieces of technology ever to appear in anything Star Wars.
Oh, explain.
They're simultaneously so cool and so dumb. Like, first of all, you see how quick they move? They move, like, really slowly.
Yeah.
And yet, when they do catch up to you, you're screwed. Because, you know, they have that electronic field pulsating around them. And, like, half the time I'm constantly thinking, like, yeah, but you can just swim away from them. And then half the time I'm just constantly thinking, yeah, but if they catch up to you, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, by the way, they're, according to Rift Hansen, they're, quote, half machine, half monster. What?
I mean, I think it's cool. I like the idea of how the Quarren and the Mon Cala spend a lot of time fusing together. You know, kind of trying to fuse together nature and technology. And I think that definitely is, to me, that seems similar to how in Return of the Jedi and in The Last Jedi, you know, we get the core or the Mon Cala cruisers like the MC-80, the MC-85, which are very much organic, and they kind of play up how organic they look. So I think it's interesting that it comes from the same planet, but in a way it's different also, because as opposed to being very much mammalian, which I think are how they intended the Mon Cala cruisers to be, you know, the way they're very bulbous and they look sort of like whales or seals. These are totally the opposite. They're like squids or octopi, jellyfish. Yeah, they're
also,
jellyfish.
By the way, they're not from Mon Calamari.
They're not.
They're from Kirkoidia.
Damn. Okay, never mind then.
Because
I take it all back.
From Tamsin's
but
home
I still think it's cool how they include that in the same sort of episode or the same story.
No, absolutely. I agree.
I partially take it back.
Where's the monster in there? Like,
I mean, I think it's clear. I thought it was clear that the body is a the body is a jellyfish, and then it had cybernetic enhancements. I thought that's what the implication was.
Really, really good jellyfish.
Yeah, they're just really, really dangerous jellyfish, and they can control them at will, I suppose.
You know, I would say that make them dumber, but that also simultaneously makes them more awesome as well. It's a weird thing. I don't know. It's just a weird thing for me, because half the time I think it's, like, really cool, and half the time I think it's really stupid. Knowing me, I'll probably just end up loving it anyway, but yeah. This arc, I'm probably going to compare this arc to the Onderon arc a lot, because the two have many similarities. One of the biggest similarities is the Separatists are too nosy for their own good.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, that is their hallmark flaw. They take over a place, but then the person who helps them take over starts to look around and say, wait, I have no more role in this. And they're like, and the Separatists are like, and?
Yeah, and
the local person's like, well, shit, this is a problem.
Yeah, they're just like, well, whatever you say, boss.
No. And then they usually turn against them, is what happens. Nossor Ri, General Tandon, and Onderon. It usually works against the Separatists.
Oh yeah, I have some trivia. So, Kit Fisto's gunship, which you see in this episode, has a bomb painted on the side with Kit Fisto's face on it, and the Aurebesh, which reads "Service with a Smile," which I would assume is in reference, of course, to Kit Fisto's iconic grin, that winning smile of his, which we see so much, or we see when we see him, which I think should be more.
Absolutely. The episode ends with Ackbar telling Lee-Char that he learned the hardest lesson a commander can learn: how to live to fight another day. To quote Yoda from Last Jedi, mastery, strength, yes, but failure, folly also. In Gungan Attack, Lee-Char and Anakin and Padme and Ahsoka decide the best course of action is to run back to the Republic and try and get more reinforcements. They try to go up to their ship, but it explodes. They try to calm Master Yoda and Mace Windu, and Master and Yoda and Mace Windu manage to send the Gungan army to reinforce the Mon Calamari and Republic troops there. But alas, in the ensuing battle with more reinforcements for the Separatist side, the Separatists capture literally everyone on the Republic side except for Ahsoka and Lee-Char, who are left together once again. And that's pretty much the episode right there.
So the fortune cookie is only through fire is a strong sword forged. In my opinion, this obviously refers to Lee-Char, you know. He really, in this episode especially, we see him go through the fire and we see him while he's captured and throughout the war, you know, he just has to kind of figure out how to toughen up for better or for worse after he's thrown into this very unfortunate situation.
Yeah. Kelly Clarkson said it best: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Lee-Char has to endure his planet being almost ripped apart by civil war to come out a better leader, a better person, and eventually a better king. So the episode starts off. This is one of my favorite things ever, with Tamsin and Dooku and Nossor Ri talking about hope and how the prince must not become a symbol of hope. It brings me back to our episode long ago with Jared the Dark Jedi from the Nerd Academy podcast. When you're the ones trying to stop hope, are they sure they're not the bad guys?
Yeah, I mean...
Are they sure?
I mean, you could kind of... That could be a very relativist argument because, you know, you can't... What? Oh, Luke, what have you done? You've destroyed the Empire's hope. The Death Star symbolized hope for a unified galaxy. It symbolized hope for 1,000,000 years of peace being ruled by Emperor Palpatine.
But can something really be hopeful if it kills millions of people?
Yeah, I mean, my point is just, I think you could make that argument for a lot of things.
You could make that argument. Yeah, I get your point, but it just seems like, yeah, they're owning that they're the bad guys at this point.
I thought this was interesting because this felt like one of the few episodes where the Republic military felt genuinely hampered or unable to keep up materially with the enemy in a way that we could actually see on screen, to the point where they had to go and ask the Gungans for help because they couldn't get another water going, or another water unit going.
Actually, I will say, the idea of them going to the Gungans, did that feel at all to you like Star Wars patting itself on the back a little bit? It feel like, oh no, what are they gonna do? There's no other underwater species. Oh wait, we created an underwater species. Good for us.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I also, by the way, it's interesting because the next episode in the season after Prisoners, after the Mon Calamari arc ends, is about the Gungans. So I like that we're seeing the Gungans a little bit before to get reacquainted with them before we have an entire Gungan episode in Shadow Warrior, which is going to be season 4, episode 4. Here's a question I have for you: does the Force work differently underwater?
Why do you ask that?
I don't know. I just thought of it while watching the arc. Because it doesn't look like it, but like, it'd be fascinating to see if the Force is affected at all underwater. Because you have a much denser substance blocking the potential connection between, you know, two different objects which are needed to use the Force, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it seems about the same because it's just the living energy. energy
Yeah,
field. So
I don't know. It's fascinating. So of course the ship gets destroyed, which if you remember, we used to do this. The ship getting destroyed is one of our in a galaxy tropes.
yes.
It happens way too often, and in this one, it's made a scene of because Tamsin decides to be completely maniacal and decides to have the Republic watch their hope sink to the bottom of the sea, which is just like, Nossor Ri, buddy, you gotta wake up sooner because if you're working with a guy who wants to have somebody watch their hope sink to the bottom of the sea, maybe you need a new boss. The prince is often mentioned in this arc.
Yes.
Lee-Char is often mentioned as a symbol of hope. That's all.
Mm.
That's all he is throughout this entire arc. I'm like, the dude can't fight for half this arc. You know what I mean? He kills like a couple of Quarren. He maybe destroys a couple of droids. I mean, he kills Tamsin too, but like, that's not until the very end. What they're more interested in him as is if he dies, Hope will die for the Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
Which, in a series so focused on Hope, the time we spend away from Hope, at least in other episodes, is interesting, and I like that we are seeing it again here. Yeah. Anything about the about that kind of idea of hope and stuff?
Not really. I do think it's interesting that the people seem to value, even the people close to him seem to value Lee-Char more as a symbol of hope and almost as a figurehead than actually for him or his potential future leadership or for his life. So I think that is sad in a way for him
Yeah.
to feel that.
What I was thinking of, and I wanted to look this up because Lee-Char comes back. Lee-Char is in a comic arc of the Darth Vader comic. Lee-Char is manipulated. This is in the time of the Empire. Lee-Char is manipulated by a fallen Jedi Padawan who survived Order 66, named Farron Bar, who's an Iktachi like Saisi Teen. And I find it interesting that, throughout that and throughout this, it's constantly about people who want to use Lee-Char. Lee-Char is never really allowed to be Lee-Char. He's always the tool of somebody else. I mean, that's a very cynical way to view this arc, but like, it's there. Which I think is quite tragic, actually. And then we see one of my favorite parts of this episode is the whole when he blows on the conch shell, and he signals to his people that he's alive, which is such a thrilling. It's such a thrilling revelation that Hope will. It's a very. I compare it to Luke in The Last Jedi at the end when he faces off against Kylo Ren. The Resistance is reborn today. I won't be the last Jedi. Hope's still alive.
Yeah.
The rebellion is reborn. That whole thing.
One thing I noticed that I really liked was how the water got dirtier and dirtier as the war went on. I don't know if there's some deep symbolism to it, but I really appreciated that attention to detail. And even if I'm assuming that it was done as attention to detail, not because there's some deep hidden meaning, but I really think it helped create this sense of the fog of war and conveying that this war is really destructive and it is really a tragedy. Like we're polluting our planet.
I mean, I think literally and metaphorically, the blood spilled is making the water dirtier. I think it's about war and peace. I think peace will, of course, because there's less bloodshed, will make the general atmosphere cleaner. You know what I mean? I don't think there's too much deep symbolism other than that. In Prisoners, Ahsoka and Lee-Char go undercover to rescue all of their allies who've been taken prisoner by the separatists. Nossor Ri, convinced by Lee-Char, makes the decision to turn against Tamsin, and they do a final battle. All of them, the Gungans, the clones, the Jedi, the Mon Cala, and the Quarrens, to defeat the droids and bring order and peace and prosperity back to Mon Calamari. And at the end of the episode, Tamsin is killed by Lee-Char, and Lee-Char ascends to the rank of King of Mon Cala, promising to unite Mon Cala for Quarren and Mon Cala people alike. Want to get to the fortune cookie of this one?
Yes. So the fortune cookie here is crowns are inherited, kings are earned.
Kingdoms.
I think kingdoms are earned. I was gonna say I think it was a little badly worded, but obviously I miswrote it when I wrote it in my notes. Yeah, kingdoms are earned. I really like this fortune cookie. I think it feels like a bit of a no-brainer. But that being said, I still think it does definitely work for this episode, and it is good for Lee-Char.
Yeah, I think we have you can't just be a king. You can't just be a leader. You have to do a leader. You have to do what a leader does. You can't just lead like Tamsin does. Tamsin has no interest in leading anything. He just has interest in bossing people around. But Lee-Char has every interest in this episode to lead, and that's what he does. And that's why he's so successful. Yeah. Here's an Easter egg in this episode. When Anakin and Kid Fisto see how they're going to be tortured by Tamsin, Fisto says, "Eels, very dangerous," which is a reference to Indiana Jones.
Asps,
I forget where.
Very dangerous.
Asps, very dangerous from Raiders, I think that is.
That's funny because that's the one I got the reference because that's the one Indiana Jones movie I've watched.
So you watch the other ones; they're really good.
Very happy,
except for Skull.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I should.
So Rai starts questioning Tamsin. Is this really necessary? And I'm like, okay, shut up, Nossor Ri. Your men were skewering Mon Cala 2 episodes ago without a care in the world, and now you're starting to regret reactions. I'm sorry, that's not how the Force works. And yeah, there's this line here. If my father were here, he could reunite Nossor Ri and the Quarrens. Which is such an interesting line right here. Do you remember that scene from Return of the Jedi? This episode reminds me of Return of the Jedi a lot, actually.
Yeah.
When Luke says to Yoda, "I can't kill my own father." No, it's not to Yoda. It's to Obi-Wan. "I can't kill my own father, Ben. I can't kill my own father." And so he goes from that to "I am a Jedi like my father before me." Another example I'm just thinking of is you're in the middle of the sequel trilogy in Last Jedi, your parents were filthy junk traders. And then, of course, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, Rey says, "I'm Rey Skywalker." You can't have a Rey Skywalker without your parents are filthy junk traders. You can't have I am a Jedi without having "I can't kill my own father." In this way, I will be a king. You can't have an "I will be a king for all people" without an "if my father were here." You know what I'm trying to say? You can't have one.
Yeah, I know what
you
you're
can't
trying to
have the resolution without having the struggle, and I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have anything about the beginning of this episode where Lee-Char's coming up with the plan?
About the beginning, I don't. I do think it is really great to see him kind of lift himself up and go through a bit of development. It feels gratifying to watch him kind of change in that way and evolve. But I don't have a ton about
it. Let's see. And then we have this awesome moment right here. If we all fought together, we would outnumber our opponents. For anyone who's listened to me talk about the Rise of Skywalker for a couple minutes, they win by making you feel like you're alone.
Yep.
You know, the idea of the Quarrens turning against the droids is the OG fleet coming out of hyperspace moment that I love. And, you know, the whole unity, bringing people together in their common goal, that's Star Wars for me, and I love that stuff. We also get, you know those four other sharks that Tamsin brings in at the end?
Yes, I do.
Those are the Knights of Ren. Do they look cool? Do they look threatening? Yeah. What do they actually do?
We don't know.
Nothing. Yeah, they do nothing. They're killed by... 3 of them are killed by Lee-Char in the span of 5 seconds. Here's a missed opportunity in this episode. How they didn't do, my name is Prince Lee-Char. You kill my father. Prepare to die. I don't know how they didn't do that in this episode. But it was right there. If you don't know that reference, that's from the awesome movie, The Princess Bride. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's really good. There's tons of Star Wars adjacent stuff in there. It seems like it's influenced by a lot of the same stuff as Star Wars is. We have that throne room scene. By the way, I'm convinced that anytime Star Wars does a scene in a throne room, they just knock it out of the park. In Return of the Jedi with Luke, Vader, and Palpatine. In Last Jedi with Rey, Snoke, and Kylo. In Rise of Skywalker with Rey, Kylo, and Palpatine. In Prisoners with Rey, Ahsoka, Lee-Char, and Tamsin. Dooku and Tamsin only want to exploit us and leave our cities broken and our resources depleted. As said in Hamilton, at least a little bit, the dark side don't discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes and it takes and it takes. But some keep giving anyway. They may rise, but they'll fall and they'll break and they'll make their mistakes. I'm just referencing all across pop culture today, apparently. You know, the dark side... The light side gives and the dark side takes is what I'm trying to say. That's what this arc is, because, you know, the dark side took everything from Nossor Ri, even when he doesn't know it. The dark side will eventually take everything from Tamsin when Dooku inevitably kills him or something, like Dooku does literally every one of his separatist agents. The dark side will eventually take from Dooku when, you know, Dooku is eventually killed in hatred. And who does Dooku report to? Palpatine, who the dark side's taken everything from, but in Palpatine's view, the dark side's given him everything because Palpatine is blind to the true nature of the Force.
Yeah. Yeah, overall, I enjoyed this arc. I don't think I got as much out of it as you did, but this is definitely still really, really solid, and I liked it. I thought that they could have gone further with some of the themes and kind of driven home the points. So overall, I found it more action oriented. I think maybe you and I have kind of opposite feelings about this arc and the Umbara arc, for example. I might say where you kind of are seeing more the themes in this and more the battle in that. And I kind of can't see past the battle part of this and don't really get the themes in this as much. But I do think that you brought up a lot of good points. It's definitely made me see some things in this arc that I didn't before. And I love that they did a whole underwater arc. Such a cool idea. I really like that.
So Jacob and I have already recorded our Umbara episode, which is incidentally 2.5 hours long, unedited. Um, so that's interesting. Uh, point point being, it was with a guest too, but
Yeah, it
anyway,
was a guess.
point being, yeah. I'll just keep this short, which is I love this arc. I adore this arc. This arc was one of the first Clone Wars arcs I ever watched. It's always stuck with me because of the original trilogy has themes about destiny and choice and fate and all of that great stuff. Um, yeah, Jacob, how do you think you'll rank these 3 episodes among themselves?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I would go. Wow, I think I would go Water War in third, Prisoners in second, and Gungan Attack in first.
I would do the exact same thing. I just
Really?
switched Gungan Attack and Prisoners. Prisoners in first, Gungan Attack, and then Water War. It gets better every episode, in my opinion.
Oh, I have some more. I have some more trivia actually. Some really
Absolutely.
fun
Go ahead.
facts here. This might interest you, Eli. Um, so the episodic director for Prisoners, Danny Keller, said that he remembers playing with the original, Gosh, I'm blanking on the name now. The original Admiral Ackbar in 1983. The original Admiral Ackbar action figure, and as a result, he remembers using the baton that Ackbar came with as a blaster, and that is why in this Admiral Ackbar has that strange looking blaster that looks more like a pointer stick. Because in the original action figure, it was intended to be a pointer stick, but then he changed it and worked it in as an homage to the original action figure.
That's pretty cool.
Also, the lightsabers were supposed to boil the water on contact, but as you can probably guess, this episode was one of the most stressful on the show's resources because it was all underwater and
So they
the
just
animation.
bifurcate the crystals?
Yeah, they bifurcated the crystals and they just added a little turbulence and some bubbles here and there. But I don't think that was really intended. But as these things tend to do, um, the cost ran up, so they couldn't do it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Abso-freaking-lutely. Now is the time for everyone's favorite part of Star Wars in a Galaxy.
What you've brought me today is worth 1/4 portion.
1/4 portion, everyone. Jacob and I, for all of these pre-recorded episodes, are going to do quick rank, which we can come up with 2 categories, and we'll just say our top 5 of those categories. Jacob, why don't you go first on this one with your first category?
All right. Starting off with, what are your top 5 lightsabers, Eli? Not lightsaber users, but the lightsabers themselves. Which are the coolest?
Let's go with. I would say the coolest lightsaber is Rey's Rise of Skywalker staff saber, the yellow one.
Yeah, the saber staff.
Yeah, the saber staff. That's number 1. Number 2 is Count Dooku's. Number 3 is the dark saber. Number 4 is probably, I would say, number 4 would be Mother Talzin's spirit saber.
Ooh.
And number 5 would be the classic Kylo Ren crossguard.
Nice. All right. I think my top 5. This is tricky. I think number 1, Kanan's lightsaber, obviously. Super elegant, super unique. Number 2, I'm gonna go with Mace Windu's lightsaber, purple. That is very cool, and I really like the shiny gold and the trivia that it actually has the letters BMF carved in it. You can guess what that stands for. It's Sam Jackson. Number 3, I would have to say Obi-Wan's second lightsaber, his blue lightsaber. I think the design is very elegant and fits his character perfectly. Number 4, Ahsoka's Rebels lightsabers, the white lightsabers. And in number 5, I'm gonna go with the Seventh Sisters Inquisitor lightsaber. I think that one is very cool.
All good choices. Okay, my first one. Top 5 most overrated Star Wars characters.
Ooh, oh man, five most overrated Star Wars characters. This is tough, and I don't want to start any fights here, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'll be okay. Number one, Bo-Katan cries. No surprise,
Why
Eli.
am I not
You know me
surprised?
too well. You are not surprised. Number
I'm not
two,
surprised.
Darth Revan, or Revan in general. I think Revan is overrated. You know, I've experienced some of his media, and quite frankly, I don't get the hype. Number three, I am I don't think there are that many characters that are over. Number three, I think Jyn Erso. I think that a lot of people really love her. Personally, I didn't get it. I didn't really feel that her character what was super compelling in Rogue One. I think maybe that tied into some of the other issues that I had with that movie. But still, fine character. Just don't think she lives up to expectations. Number four is going to be K2SO also. Yes, I think he is funny, but I do think that he is, again, probably a bit overhyped. And my number five, is hard. I think my number five is going to have to be Count Dooku. Now, I love Count Dooku, but I think that he does get a bit lionized at times, especially in terms of his lightsaber fighting abilities. I don't know how many times I've had a intense discussion about who would win Mace Windu or Count Dooku with any number of people, and I always say Mace Windu, and everyone else always invariably says Count Dooku. But honestly, still a great character, just a bit overrated. How about you?
Interesting choices. Number 5. I was gonna say Ventress is my number 5, but I switched it to Mace Windu because
Whoa.
Mace Windu. Because Mace Windu. Number 4, Cad Bane. He has a stupid voice and he's a stupid character.
But he has a nice hat.
Sure.
Fine. Yeah, the areas of we got to agree on the hat though.
Yeah, we gotta agree on the hat. Number 3, we gotta talk about Maul.
Ooh, I figured that would come up.
I'm sure you're surprised it's not higher. It was gonna be Maul was gonna be number 1 on my list until I thought about number 2, Starkiller. And number 1, let me say this with enough certainty of everything. Okay, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Revan. Get off of that guy's back. He's terrible. Freaking hate that guy. Okay. Jacob, what about your second one?
My number 2. What are your top 5 droid characters in Star Wars?
Top 5 droid characters. Let's talk about BB-8 as number 1. Dio as number 2. BB-8, Dio, R2-D2. I'll go with. Does General Grievous count?
I'll suppose General Grievous. I think General Grievous can count.
Actually, I'm not gonna count Grievous now that I think about it, because he's not really a droid. I'll go with HK-47 as my number 4, and I'll go with shoot. I'll go with BB-8 as my number 5, or BB-90.
BB-90, nice. Good, very, very interesting choices. I was not expecting some of those, but
What do you think?
I think they're good nonetheless.
What about you?
Okay. This is in no particular order because I love a lot of droids, and I'm very sad that I can't just pick the entire B1 Battle Droid Society for my list. But I am going to say number 1, Chopper. Love that little guy. Number 2, C-3PO. Legendary. Number 3, R2-D2. Pretty, I know those are some basic picks, but I I love them too much. Number 4, it is going to have to be the B1 battle droid that says, "What a terrible." No, the B1 battle droid that says, "Oh well, it's just my programming." In Ambush, the first episode of the Clone Wars. And number 5, I'm gonna have to go, man. I think I'm gonna go with AP5. AP5 is such a meme.
Not as legendary as number 4, the legendary battle droid, who says, "Ah well, it's my programming." Truly, never a better impact.
They're self-aware. They're self-aware.
Okay, final one, Jacob. We're going into the Clone Wars right now, but let's talk about the other Star Wars show. What are your top 5 favorite episodes of Star Wars Rebels?
Top 5 episodes of Star Wars Rebels. That is tough. That is really tough. I have so many episodes of Rebels I love. I think number 1 has to be Family Reunion and Farewell. Number 2, 0 Hour. Number 3, Twilight of the Apprentice. I'm lumping those in as one because I don't think they're worth separating, really, for obvious reasons. Number 4, Jedi Knight. And number 5, Doom.
Number 5, 0 Hour. Number 4, Twilight of the Apprentice. Number 3, A World Between Worlds. Number 2, Family Reunion and Farewell. And number 1, in a shock to absolutely nobody, Twin Suns.
Twin Suns. That is a very good episode.
It's such a great episode. But in the meantime, I think that is going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Next week, or at least next episode, we will be covering Shadow Warrior, Nomad Droids, and Mercy Mission. Mercy Mission is before Nomad Droids, but I'm apparently pretty tired right now, so I mixed that one up. Follow us on Twitter at InAGalaxyPod, Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, anywhere you listen to your podcast. We'll be there. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Email us at swinagalaxy@gmail.com. And in the meantime, may the Force be with you always.